A hackathon is not for you if you cannot be adaptable, if you cannot be a good team player, if you don't have good communication skills, and if you're not a good listener. Hey there, it's Heaven. Welcome back to my channel. And in this video, I want to tell you all about my very first experience attending a hackathon. I had the opportunity to attend the Techstars Startup Weekend Tampa Bay this past weekend, and I want to tell you everything that happened. First things first, let me tell you why I even attended this event. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you'll know that I'm an MBA student, and you might also know that I am looking to enter the entrepreneurship kind of tech space. And I don't know anything about anything when it comes to this. I have a background in digital media, communications, and journalism. So I've been looking for events near me at low to no cost so I can start to dip my toes into this space, try to learn what I don't know, and try to better understand how it works, what the opportunities are. Basically, I just wanted to get in the room. I do have a friend of mine who actually is a founder. In fact, I did a video with her, and if you haven't seen that, make sure you go check it out. And I've been learning a little bit from her, but I figure why not take it upon myself to just immerse myself in this space in my local area, try to meet some cool people, try to make some connections, and just learn. And I'm excited to share that in addition to having just attended this hackathon, I will be at Emerge Americas in Miami next week. I'm going in with an open mind, and I'm hoping to learn a lot. And it was the same case with the hackathon. If you want me to do a separate video, maybe even a short, just talking about how I find these events, let me know in the comments, because I do have a couple little search hacks that have been helpful for me. In the end, I was hoping to come away with maybe a few new connections, maybe some cool ideas, or maybe a framework for how people find ideas, and overall just a positive experience and a story to tell to you guys. And I'm glad to say I came away with that and much more. First of all, I had no idea what to expect. I discovered this particular event on LinkedIn after doing a little poking around and digging. The guy who was in charge of it, he was a local facilitator. He owns a business. He recently sold a business. He's deep into the startup and tech space. And I could see photos from prior years and a little bit of social media posts, but nothing extensive. I also saw that there was an Instagram page for the event, but it hadn't been really managed or sustained to a lengthy degree. So I didn't have a lot of content to consume going in, but it only cost me like 15 bucks. And I figured, what do I got to lose? I didn't have to drive very far, and worst comes to worst, I could just leave if I didn't want to, but I'm glad I didn't. As a matter of fact, I made a LinkedIn post about how I initially wanted to leave on day one because I was super uncomfortable and overwhelmed. Why, you might ask? Well, like I said, my background is non-technical, and a lot of people who attended this event have experience as data scientists and coders and front-end and back-end developers, full-stack developers. They have all this technical experience. They're talking about tools and skill sets that I don't know anything about, words I've never heard before. And so I just started to feel very doubtful of myself and my abilities. I remember I was texting my friend and she asked me how was it going, because I've been telling her I was going to this event, and I was like, I really want to leave, and I am telling myself I want to leave because it's such nice weather in St. Pete. There's so many events going on. Like, there was a music festival, there was a St. Patrick's Day festival. But the truth is, like, if I wasn't at this event, I wasn't going to go to those events either. I just was uncomfortable. I was out of my comfort zone, which was the whole idea. But it's one thing to say you're going to put yourself out of your comfort zone. It's another thing to actually do it and to be in that space and to just simply be in discomfort and feel like you don't have anything to offer. Spoiler alert, I found out that I did have something to offer. Keep in mind, this is only a 3-day program. We started on Friday evening, and by Sunday afternoon, we had to have a completed pitch deck and MVP. So here's what happened on day one. Day one was a Friday, and we started around 5:30 with some dinner. Then we went into the auditorium and heard the keynote presentation from this guy named Miraj Patel. He is the founder of a company called Harness. The best way I can describe it is when you use your card to pay for something, you can round up to donate to charity. He talked about how he had raised $30 million in funding, how he and his co-founder had to sell everything at one point to make sure he made payroll, how they came up with the business idea. It was really fascinating, and it was really cool to hear from somebody who has actually done it, started a company, founded it, and like is still building it and working on it and making it something real. Oh, I should also mention, I think there were about 40 or less people at the event. There were ultimately 6 teams that pitched on the last day, and each team had 3 to 6 people in the teams. After the keynote, then there was a little bit of an icebreaker, and then it was the opportunity to go up and pitch. 15 people went and pitched. I did end up pitching. I didn't go up to pitch wanting to necessarily be chosen as one of the top groups to move forward. I just wanted to do it as part of my own personal experiment of getting myself out of my comfort zone. But lo and behold, my pitch was actually selected as one of the top 8 pitches to move forward in the competition. And I was truly shocked and surprised. I pitched a collaborative media platform for government organizations to have all the internal folks necessary to collaborate and draft press releases and have it automate to create emails, text messages, and social posts, and then also push out those communications through those channels within a single platform. We ultimately ended up pivoting, and I'll get to that, but I was really amazed that my pitch was good enough for people to want to spend the next 2 days potentially working on it and moving forward. I thought that was pretty cool. After pitches, we formed teams, and then they sent us to the offices that were in inside the building where we were working. At the USF St. Pete campus, the business school, there's a bunch of little offices and rooms. It's like you really are a startup. The guy who was running it kept making this running joke about how like if you were a real startup, you'd probably start in a garage, and the offices that we had were a lot nicer. First night, my team and I ended up staying until around 9 p.m., which I was so shocked by because I was like, oh, we're certainly gonna leave by like 7:38. But started talking about the idea, it evolved a little bit. I remember when I did my pitch, I framed it around trying to reduce wasted time within the local government spent on developing communications, particularly in emergency situations. And though the pitch evolved from this concept, we kind of stuck with this government element. And so we ended up pivoting to something that would serve businesses who wanted to work with the government rather than serving the government and trying to get them as our customers and clients, because we all know the governments are slow to adapt. Trying to do business with them is very challenging. But in my mind, it made sense because I was like,
the government has money. Like, we don't have to go and find like consumers. Like, the government can work with us.
But there's a lot of bureaucracy and things like that. I personally didn't know how it worked, so we ended up moving on. So we did a lot of talking and circular conversations and strategy, and I found it really valuable because the other people in my group, they had questions and expertise and brought up things that I would have not otherwise considered. That was the most valuable part for me, was just understanding how to work with people who have different backgrounds and view things differently than I do. Let's move on to day 2. The pitch evolved a lot. We started with a communications platform and tool to help you more rapidly draft and approve amongst your internal stakeholders digital communications for a local government, and then push them out through multiple channels. What we landed on was a tool to help businesses who work with the governments more rapidly respond to RFPs and not have to spend so much time entering in the basic information that they have to enter for everyone. A few challenges arose, and one of them I'll just name is that there are several different websites that people can access RFPs on, and for several different government organizations, and despite some of the language and the words being similar, they all mean different things. We got a lot of value out of the mentors that were circulating throughout the program. In fact, 2 of the mentors we actually ended up speaking with were super valuable to us in the sense that they actually, one of them that week had been spending over 30 hours working on an RFP. Something that I struggled with though with the team was that although everyone had a really good perspective to provide, I was very much stuck on, we have to have something to present by Sunday afternoon. And while it is helpful and valuable to present problems or potential challenges and questions that the judges might ask, my belief is that you just have to sell it and commit to the idea right now. And if we are to move forward and create it as a real thing, perhaps down the line in the future, then we can attack that. But also I was like, this is just for fun, guys. Like, we need to be having a good time. And we did have a good time, but I did find myself getting a little bit frustrated. Saturday was really the most like in the weeds day. Something else that frustrated me a little bit too with the team is that not only would some folks present problems, it felt like the problems that were being presented were coming up way later in the game than they should have. And again, I'm very big on being solutions oriented. I'm like, okay, we have a very clear timetable. This is not like an actual thing that we have to go out and produce if we don't want to. The other thing, I'm like, if it's not getting traction, if it's not making sense, let's pivot, let's switch. I was very big on let's pivot, let's switch Friday evening, early Saturday, but as the hours pressed on, I was like, okay guys, so let's do something. We got to figure out what we're gonna do. Like, let's decide this. Like, let's just make a decision. Let's be decisive and let's make a plan and move forward. On day 2, we did end up staying pretty late as well. I was fully committed to leaving at least by 8 p.m. I definitely walked out of that building and called my mom around 8:50 something. Once the conversations get flowing and the ideas get moving, you really lose track of time because you're so in the weeds and in the thick of it. There were a couple team members of mine who stayed a little bit later, and I spoke to someone from another group who said he left a little bit early, like around 6 or 7 after dinner, and then he came back around 3 a.m. and was just coding. And then he named like 3 different program systems he was using to build a website, to build his MVP, and I'm like, I've never heard of that in my life. I don't say this in a demeaning way or to generalize, but the way that I can best articulate it is that when someone who has like a technical background has a project they're working on or an idea, they just go like narrow and deep on it, like just constantly. He said he got there around 3 a.m. and when I spoke to him, it was like 10 a.m. and he had been there all night. And I'm like, whoa, that is really something. Let's jump into day 3. A couple of my team members stayed way later, so much so that one of them didn't come in until around noon. I wasn't clear on how late, but they were building the MVP. So they were using Figma. I had heard of Figma before, but it's this like design platform to kind of get like a visual sense of what an app or a site is going to look like. If I didn't describe that properly, don't come for me. Just let me know in the comments how I should describe it next time. Thank you. They had been using Figma to show what our product was supposed to look like. And in the morning, it was just myself and one other team member who didn't have a hand in the technical aspect of designing that product. So I was a little bit concerned for a while because I'm like, I don't have the screenshots. I don't have the screens that y'all made. We can work on the deck, which we did, but I was getting a little bit nervous as the hours went on, but eventually they did show up. We managed to crank out the deck, but the changes were being made up until like literally the 11th hour. I saw the team, they were making changes literally up until like they were about to go up. And I was just like, we just got to go with what we got, guys. Of all the presentations, ours probably didn't have as much information as it needed to be as thorough as some of the other ones in terms of financials, projections, quantifying and articulating the research that we did do in terms of market validation. But those are all things that we know now. We can take it to the next one. So you might be wondering, Heaven, what the heck did you guys pitch? Like, what was your product? I'm gonna do my best to explain it to you. It is called RF Pilot. It is an AI-powered browser extension and document drafter that assists government vendors in responding to RFPs to save them time and to help them understand how qualified they might be for bid opportunities. So let's say you have a marketing firm and you do marketing work and you want to bid on a government opportunity. Well, if you use the word marketing, and this came from one of the mentors, a lot of different things will show up, right? But if you do branding and brand guides and brand design, maybe there are other marketing jobs that'll come up when you use that word. And so the browser extension would be embedded in your browser. You tap it or it would appear on its own on, like, let's say sam.gov or BidNet Direct. On different government RFP sites, a score would appear based on your historical data that you provide to us when you make an account and past bids that you've won. It would give a score of how likely you are to be a good fit for that opportunity. So that's the browser extension piece. The other piece of it is that when you respond to an RFP, you can go on our platform, click new response or new document, new draft, whatever. Then you take the link to the specific RFP, put it into the document drafter. It will populate the questions and all the things that it's gonna ask you. And then using the information from your account and, again, historical data that you provided, it would populate responses to all the questions, especially things like name, contributors, their experience, what they do, stuff like that. Because we heard from mentors a lot of times that it's kind of like when you apply for a job and you upload a resume, then it asks you everything that's already on the resume. In our research, we found several things that already do that, but the browser extension piece is an additional thing. Before I close out, I want to tell you the top takeaways and things that I learned from this Startup Weekend experience. The first being, everything has already been done. Any problem you can think of, there 9 times out of 10 is already something out there that exists to solve it, or some combination of things that already exist out there to solve it. And so I think in entrepreneurship, we're just trying to think about how we can innovate and make things either easier, faster, less expensive, or more niche to a specific audience. And ironically, a conversation I was having with one of my team members when we started talking about some of the features we wanted to add or doing that competitive research, he said something along the lines of, oh, well, this competitor already does this. Who's to stop them from adding this feature that we said? And I'm like, well, what's stopping them is that we got to pitch this tomorrow. And this is just a little funsy activity. And also what's stopping them is that they don't have it now, so we can pitch it. It is not a direct replica. And so I just thought it was really interesting that from an entrepreneurial standpoint, this guy I was speaking to was going to let someone else having already done it be the deterrent for the project we were working on. Granted, it was way too late in the game to change, but I was like, I feel like that's the first thing they tell you in entrepreneurial school is like, yeah, everything's been done, but like, how can you do it better? How can you do it different? How can you differentiate all that? Something else that I realized that I'm trying to work through how I feel about it is entrepreneurship, at least in this tech and innovation space, to me, seems a lot about finding problems and exploiting them for profit. And I get that we live in a society. I think it's interesting that the messaging a lot of times is about like innovating and changing the world, but a lot of it really just seems like, okay, how do I find a problem and make money off of it? Like, it doesn't really feel like, how do I make things better? Like, maybe that's part of it. I have to work through my personal feelings about that. Another key takeaway that I have is I'm super proud of myself for staying the course and finishing out this event. I'm telling you, there were several points of time where I'm like, I think I want to go. But it was purely because I was out of my element. This was a totally new space. The other thing I realized is like at times, like I just find myself in a leadership or project manager position. There were ample times where I felt like if I had not spoken up and said, okay, so how are we going to move forward? What are the next steps? Knowing what we know or having discussed this, like where are we going from here? And I usually typically when I find myself in these spaces, I almost always sit back, listen and observe and wait to see if another leader emerges. 8 to 9 times out of 10 it doesn't happen and I have to do it. And I was talking to my mom about this and I'm like, maybe this is my skill, being able to step back and see the bigger picture and realize, okay, well, we're gonna talk about like how we're gonna code this and we're gonna talk about all the little features and all that, but like we have an objective and a mission. We have to put together a deck, we have to develop an MVP, we have to know our problem statement, we have to know our solution, and we're having all this excellent and amazing and really engaging and thoughtful discussion, but that is not moving us forward. And I found myself assuming that role. And so now I'm thinking about like, how do I parlay this into work or my career or perhaps a venture, knowing that I don't have that technical experience and knowing that even though I do want to learn how to code a little bit and that is a goal of mine, that probably won't be an expertise area of mine, at least for some time. And so knowing that I have that kind of organization mindset, that I can bring that to a team and that is valuable. And that was really good for me to feel like, oh, I can be useful. Like, that's nice. I learned that the startup life, at least right now, is definitely not for me. In real life, I mean, this was real life, but in a real sense, like if I was really to pursue this, I would struggle deeply to be a startup founder, because you have to believe in this idea and believe in it every day and believe in it more than anybody else and just keep going and keep at it and all that. You have to commit. And something that I feel like I am really bad at is sticking with things. Once I get bored, once I don't like it, once I feel like, okay, I've had enough, I've seen enough, I move on to the next thing. And in some cases, that has been to my benefit and it serves me. But in other ones, you know, I wonder, like maybe I should have stuck something out a little bit longer, or like maybe I didn't attack it from every corner or avenue. Maybe I didn't see where this could have gone. I realized in this experience, I think what might have contributed to my discomfort as well is that I was so ready to jump ship. Like if at a certain point in our discussions, after we pivoted several times, but if after one pivot we did more discussion and it felt like, okay, this is not working, I'm every time was ready to be like, okay, so what are we gonna do instead? Or this isn't working, let's do something else. You have to kind of have discernment and know how to strike that balance between knowing when it's time to move on from something or dig in and lean in. And I am still working on that. So if you have some tips or resources or tools on how to get better at that, drop them in the comments below because I need them. I really found a ton of value from this Startup Weekend Techstars event. If you have the opportunity to attend one, I highly recommend it, even if you have no intentions of starting anything in the foreseeable future. But if you're interested even mildly in the space, this is the perfect place to go just to get your feet wet and just try something new. I guess I didn't realize how comfortable I get in my day-to-day life just going to work, spending time with my family, or just doing the things that I do every day. Like this really got me out of the day-to-day grind and just put me in something different. So I can't wait to go to the next one. In fact, I added all of the mentors that I spoke to and some of the people from the program on LinkedIn. And one of the mentors sent me an upcoming event. I'm gonna check it out and see if I wanna go. So if I do go, there may be a video about that. But in the meantime, I'm looking forward to Emerge Americas next week in Miami. But besides that, if you know of any business, hackathon, or startup events in the Tampa Bay area or the state of Florida taking place throughout 2025, do not hesitate to let me know about it. Drop them in the comments and maybe I'll check it out. If you watched this video to the end, thank you so much. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.